So we're up to putting in our cams now, and on this one we ended up buying a new set of cams. The original set was reground to a Carrera spec and had suffered a lot of damage from the oil starvation issues due to blockages. So I took the opportunity to go with the Carrera cam again, which is a pretty standard different choice for the turbos. I also went with the later model 3.2 Carrera center bolt and washer, which makes things a lot easier when you're doing your timing, getting everything tightened up. So we're just going to slide these in, start doing our chain depths, and get these timed up. Rotates nice and smooth. The turbos have the advantage where the drive for the scavenge pump is exposed, so it allows you to a little bit easier to get it in and just rotate it. Just making sure that everything feels good on my journals. We did have to do a lot of work on these cam boxes. That's good. And pop. Nice end float. $51.65, so we're out 5, 3, 5, 4, so we need to add a shim here. Definitely closer that way, within 0.2. Okay, so I'm just measuring my chain depths. You measure from the case to the first wheel on the jack shaft or the intermediate shaft. I start with 3 shims on the back of my cam under my vernier wheel, and then I'm just measuring from my straight edge down, zeroed for my width of my straight edge. So the first measurement, it was too deep by about 0.48, 0.49. So I just put another 0.5 millimeter shim in there. And right now we're getting really, really, really close. I've got to make sure I'm flat. Measure it in a few different places. Say 51.4 would be the average size. 51.41, 0.39. So we're out by about 0.3. 51.47 right there. Definitely closer moving it out a 0.5 millimeter versus having it in too deep. Sometimes it's hard to get these exactly dead nuts on. Oh, I'm right there. 106.52. 0.53. It's spinning it. Couple of places. Yeah, right there. Within 0.07 of a millimeter. So I ended up with 3 shims on this side, 4 shims on that side. All fine. Maximum permissible difference is 0.25. We're right on the edge this way, but we're definitely closer moving it out 1 shim than we were minus 1 shim. Okay, so all I've got right now is a base setting on my cams, which is basically keyways up. On TDC number 1 or number 4 until I put a valve in it. I'm really nowhere, although realistically it's number 1. Chain depths have been set. I've just nipped the cams for right now. This is because I'll put in a rocker and start my timing to see where I'm at and get a lot closer before I start doing anything else. But this is the basic setup. I've got my dummy tensioners in and tightened. These dummy tensioners are stuff that I made a long time ago, probably 36 years ago. And all they're doing is putting tension on the chain so I eliminate any sloppiness or drag, especially when I start putting a rocker in. When I do the timing, I'm just going to have an intake valve in on each side. This way it takes some of the load off of turning the engine and off the timing chain and eliminates that valve spring from different valves kind of skipping. All right, on this engine, once again, it suffered from oil starvation at the top end due to poor assembly technique. So this was one of those rare accounts where I couldn't save anything on rockers, rocker shafts. We were able to save the cam boxes, though my first instinct was to replace them. So, and even down to when I went to pull the adjusters out of the old rocker arms to transfer them over, because when you buy a rocker arm from Porsche, A, these are pricey. B, they don't come with anything. No adjusting gear. So you end up having to either transfer. Now what happens with these, and this is why you don't ever want to over tighten the lock nuts, is when somebody over tightens the adjusting nut to lock it down, what it does is it stretches the threads inside here. It actually pulls all this up. And what happens when you go to wind it out is you get down to where the threads haven't stretched, and now there's a thread pitch change and it won't go through. Next thing is, same thing, we couldn't save any of the rocker shafts. They were all too heavily damaged. By the time we'd clean them up, they'd be undersized. So we've got new rocker shafts. We've got the updated O-rings. These help them to stop leaking. But if your cam box is really trashed or scored up, they won't solve all of your problems. Once again, you got to transfer all of your locking components across to each shaft. So we're just going to assemble up one shaft, one rocker for each side right now, and get these assembled into the cam boxes. Okay, very important that the shaft is set up correctly. You want to make sure that you can just see the edge of the tapered washer. It should be flush with, and the shaft should be flush with the cam. This is the most common mistake I see, is people center the shaft over in this ball. What happens is it puts the shaft too far that way, and it actually wears in and wears out the rocker. success. It's gonna move. Oh, that's the only hole. It's all right. First one, I got some latitude. This is a first-year apprentice from an old head start, actually from a 3-liter turbo. Let's see where we end up over here. We missed by a lot. Huge amount.
Oh.
Canyon, I tell you.
It's moved a little bit.
Okay. I got some latitude with this one. Back to 0. Nice. One rotation. 2 rotations. Perfect. I am within 0.018 of my target number.
No such luck to have it timed.
Sure it is. It'll be timed.
Yeah, but it didn't land right there.
Close enough. I have seen someone time this with just keyways up and then not do the dial gauge.
Oh. The cab is not moving on the side.
Alright, so we're exactly the same as the other side. Alright, so cam timing is set. So the timing is going to be different than what you see in your turbo manual because we're using Carrera cam, so we're timing to the Carrera specs. Pretty much ready to close this up right now. A couple other quick checks I need to make. So one last check that I want to make, because I have deviated from the design of this engine, and anytime you deviate from a Porsche design, so different pistons, different cams, different combinations, you need to check the things that they would have already checked for you in the engineering. So we've got a different cam, and right now we have Marley Motorsport pistons with an increased compression ratio. We've done all the math down here, and we know our barrel heights are good. My cam thrust plate went straight on, located centrally in the timing housing. That's usually one of the first indicators that, hey, you might have got your math right. Secondly, our timing chain tensioners, all of our ranges are coming up in the adjustable range. My valve installed heights are good. My rocker arm adjusters are in the middle. But the last thing I want to check is my piston to valve clearance. So right now my piston's at TDC. It's as high as it's going to get. My intake valve is as far open as it's going to get at this time. What I want to do is I want to make sure that I have at least 2 millimeters or 80 thousandths of clearance between the intake valve and the piston. So to do that, I'm just using my pry bar and a nut, and I've still got my dial gauge. I'm zeroed. I'm 2 on my scale here, so it's not going to give me a huge range. I'm just going to move that valve open, and we got 1 millimeter. And we got 2 millimeters, and I'm about to be out of gauge, but I can easily, that's my gauge, zeroed, and I've still got some clearance. Actually, I'm just starting to contact, so I can feel the piston hitting the valve right at 2.45 millimeters. So good piston to valve clearance. I know when I fire it up, I'll check the exhaust as well, just to be on the safe side. But I don't have any issues so far. Then we'll get the rest of the rockers in and adjust it up and start closing things up. Okay, just got all my rockers loaded with new elephant's feet adjusters, new lock nuts, and getting ready to assemble up my rocker shaft. So I just got to finish cleaning all my hardware.
Ooh. Wow. Nice one.
Just checking the squirting. Looks good. Shiny new valve cover. New tensioner O-rings. Gotta order these separately because they don't come in a 3-liter turbo gasket set, because these weren't invented yet. Little tiny dab of silicone grease just to lubricate the O-ring. Do not put any kind of gasket glue on these. new sealing washer that does not come in the gasket set. For the money that they're charging, you'd think they'd get all the gaskets in them at least. So we're getting ready to put the spark plugs into this engine. Now, Bosch has slowly been discontinuing spark plugs for probably the last 15, 20 years now, and just using up their inventory, not producing them. Finally, at one point I was still able to purchase the W3 DPO, which is the correct spark plug for the turbo. However, on this particular job, the engine came in with the wrong plug in it, not even close to what we're putting in it. But when I went to purchase a new set of plugs, and they were getting north of $60 a plug for the Porsche plug, because what Bosch does is when they discontinue something, they just start increasing the price. It's usually a good way to indicate if something is going up every other month and it is a Bosch product, more than likely it has been discontinued and they are just getting rid of the stock they have. So the plug that I'm going to use today this is what Porsche has superseded the turbo plug on all of their engines to. It's a NGK product, and it is a fine wire plug, which means it has a very small electrode. If we zoom out a little bit. The heat range is correct, but the problem is this plug is a resistor spark plug. That means there's 5,000 ohms of resistance inside the plug. Now, spark plugs have been changing to resistor plugs since the invention of digital fuel injection, because high ignition voltages and spark plug firings will mess with 5-volt reference systems used in DME control fuel systems. Problem is, from an ignition standpoint, it will take some of the energy away from the actual spark plug itself. So we finally hit that point where there are no spark plugs left, and this is pretty much for all Porsche models from the 65 all the way through 89. In 88 model cars and 84 models, the 3.2s, they did use a resistor plug, and they changed the ignition system because they went to a digital fuel injection system. So they were having to rely on reference voltages, and they did suffer in ignition voltages. But for the early CDI cars, this is kind of like the last death nail in this system. From a system that was extremely efficient, produced very high spark energy, kept the plugs alive, did a lot of stuff, but now things are gone. Standard M6 piece of hardware into an aluminum housing.